2011, Hackleburg.
This is phenomenal. It's gone. The neighborhood is gone.
Tuscaloosa.
Large tornado on the ground. Please take cover.
Oh my God. That's it. That's it. Oh my God.
Joplin.
It's a massive tornado. Massive destruction.
If you are in Joplin, please take cover.
More than 1,700 tornadoes turn an ordinary year into the deadliest in a century. And it didn't explode all at once. It began quietly in the very first month. The year 2011 didn't begin with a quiet winter. After a major outbreak in December that spilled into January, 36 tornadoes swept across the United States in just the first week. By February 25th, the pattern intensified, and again on February 27th to 28th, two back-to-back outbreaks struck, producing 63 tornadoes in 2 months. A clear signal that the atmosphere was waking up far earlier than usual.
Winter tornadoes are rare, but unusually warm weather here collided with a cold front, propelling this storm system through northwest Arkansas and into Missouri.
It seemed that the atmosphere was beginning to transition into a more active phase, typical of the spring season. But nothing happened in March. Although about 75 tornadoes were confirmed, which is slightly above the long-term average for March. But these tornadoes were weak, creating a false sense of calm. By early April 2011, the atmosphere was already restless. From April 9th to 11th, the first major outbreak of the month tore across the Midwest and into the Southeast. Nearly 50 tornadoes touched down in just 2 days, ripping through farms, towns, and highways. In Iowa, a violent EF4 touched down west of Pocahontas on 9th of April around 9:54 p.m. With winds traveling over 170 miles an hour, it carved a path through open country, powerful enough to flatten homes and toss heavy equipment like toys.
The entire home was taken down, but if you look down in the basement, there's a pickup truck that had blown down into the basement. Remarkably, there were people down in the basement at the time. And Liz, this isn't the only damage that we found.
Wisconsin was hit hard too, seeing one of its largest April tornado days ever. But despite the strength of the storms, no lives were lost. A rare moment of luck in a year that had very little of it. However, that calm didn't last. In just 3 days, a powerful storm system led to explosive consequences. From April 14th to 16th, almost 179 tornadoes spun up across 16 states, from the high plains through the Midwest and deep into the Southeast. Towns in Oklahoma, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Alabama were battered as supercells marched east, one after the other, leaving roofs torn away, neighborhoods shredded, and entire communities changed forever. This outbreak became known as the Forgotten Outbreak, not because it was small, but because what came next would overshadow it. Then came April 16th, the day the Carolinas would never forget.
Have tornado warnings in effect for Caswell County, also Alamance counties that expire at 2:45 this afternoon. And an impressive look on the radar of those storms moving through Caswell and Alamance counties.
As the storms pushed east, they roared into North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia, spawning about 30 tornadoes in a single day, the largest outbreak in the state's history. These communities rarely saw violent twisters, so when they struck, nobody was truly prepared for the sudden destruction that consumed these areas. One of the most destructive tornadoes of the outbreak touched down at 2:53 p.m. on April 16th near Sanford, North Carolina. It came from a violent supercell racing across Lee County. This long-track EF3 twister, with winds up to about 160 miles per hour, blasted southeast through neighborhoods and businesses, flattening a Lowe's home improvement store and shredding dozens of homes in its first few miles on the ground. It smashed its way into Holly Springs, snapping trees and downing power lines, then bore into the greater Raleigh area. With winds raging at 160 miles per hour, the twister tore off roots, snapped trees, and filled the streets with debris.
It's just like a train, just continuously coming. I thought it was never going to end. And it was the most powerful wind I've ever felt in my life.
Parts of South Saunders Street near I-40 took a full beating, with many roads becoming impassable. It then continued towards the Stony Brook North community, where almost half of the 200 mobile home units were devastated. When the tornado tore through the trailer park, one home was left crushed beneath a massive fallen tree. Christina Alvarez, her son, daughter, and two nephews tried to take shelter from the storm in the closet of her trailer. When the storm subsided, the bloodied mother ran outside, desperately screaming for help. A huge tree fell directly on her home. A neighbor rushed through the branches to save them, but under the weight of the trunk, he could only feel the children's lifeless arms. The three boys died at the scene. Later, Christina was hit by another blow. Her 6-month-old daughter died in the hospital from her injuries. She was the fourth child to be killed in the storm.
There are around 200 mobile homes in that mobile home park. Around half of those will not be livable.
The tornado claimed 6 lives in total and left over 300 injured. The Sanford to Raleigh tornado was among the costliest single tornadoes of the mid-April outbreak, with damage in the Raleigh area alone estimated at over $115 million, and dozens of homes and businesses damaged or destroyed. Just minutes later, at about 3:40 p.m., another violent tornado spun out of the same severe weather system near Wayside, southwest of Fayetteville. This twister quickly strengthened into an EF3, with estimated winds around 140 miles per hour as it entered Cumberland County and the northwestern parts of Fayetteville. The destruction became unimaginable when the winds reached the area between Yadkin Road and the entrance to Fort Bragg. All the neighborhoods along Yadkin Road were hit with devastating force, and entire blocks were reduced to rubble as the mile-wide tornado ripped apart one home after the other.
You can see these cinder block buildings, almost like a dorm-like building, but now just looks like a child's building blocks that have been thrown around after they were through playing with them.
After the tornado passed, 150 houses in Fayetteville were completely destroyed, but the winds kept raging on with the same intensity. The storm then tracked along the I-95 corridor through Dunn, just south of Benson. By this time, multiple vortex tornadoes were wreaking havoc on the ground. After damaging countless homes and businesses, the tornado finally lifted near Smithville at 4:45 p.m. Like the Sanford storm, this was a long-track tornado that stayed on the ground for 58.5 miles, tearing through 5 different counties. But the death toll here was lower, only 2, thanks to the early warnings. And while the nightmare was over for one community, it was just beginning for the next one. The same day, an EF3 touched down around 6:55 p.m., a mile south of Askew,ville, causing extensive damage to farms and homes across its 19-mile path.
Her whole house flew away over in the woods, and she was in it. And that's what happened. They took her out. They took the whole house in the woods and laying her over in the woods. And she probably didn't know what hit her.
This tornado stood out because, despite not being rated EF4, it caused enormous human and economic damage, killing 11 people in a matter of minutes. By nightfall, 24 people in North Carolina were dead, and families were left searching through debris where their homes once stood, while emergency crews worked through the darkness, unsure how many more were trapped. And yet, even after all that, 2011 was still only warming up. What lay ahead would be bigger, deadlier, and impossible to forget. By the final week of April, the atmosphere was primed for a disaster of historic proportions. On April 25th, meteorologists recorded alarming signs. Warm southern air and powerful high-altitude winds created conditions for an explosive event. That night, that threat became a reality when the first tornado touched down in Arkansas. It was 6:48 p.m. when a tornado touched down in Pulaski County, about 19 miles west-northwest of downtown Little Rock, near the rural community of Ferndale. The circulation strengthened quickly, reaching high-end EF2 intensity, with winds estimated between 120 and 130 miles per hour. As it moved northeast, crossing Lake Maumelle, the twister began to grow fast, eventually expanding into a massive wedge more than a mile wide, and by the time it reached Vilonia, it had transformed into a massive rain-wrapped wall of wind. Richard Bass had just finished dinner with his 3 children when he sensed a change in the air pressure. He quickly gathered his family and rushed to the nearest closet that was designed as a tornado shelter. In just a few seconds, the storm slammed into his home, ripping its roof and walls off with unimaginable pressure.
I felt the barometric pressure drop. I felt the rumbling, and I grabbed my 3 kids and my 3 dogs and went to the closet right back there.
Richard's family survived, but not everyone was as lucky. The storm tore into Black Oak Ranch estates and nearby neighborhoods, uprooting homes from the foundations and shredding mobile homes. It was one of the most destructive tornadoes Arkansas had seen in decades. 4 people died in Valonia, and almost 60 were injured.
The wind just started howling, and all heck broke loose, and something come crashing through the front door, and it just, we just thought the house was going to explode any second.
But this was only the beginning of the outbreak, as the human cost was about to exceed all expectations. April 26th started with a high risk of severe weather. A warning was issued for portions of Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. 31 EF0 and 19 EF1 tornadoes struck different parts of the country that day. 4 EF2 level twisters also hit Greenbrier, Marshall, Tar Hill, and Deadwood, Texas. One of them was a long-track wedge tornado that caused damage in rural parts of Texas and Louisiana. The strongest one recorded on the 26th was the EF3 that ravaged the Campbell Army Airfield at Fort Campbell. The weather situation was worsening by the hour. Finally, at 1:10 a.m., the Storm Prediction Center issued a high-risk outlook for severe weather. It was the strongest warning in their system, reserved for only the most outrageous days. The morning began with James Spann urging viewers on live television not to ignore the tornado threats, which promised to be extremely powerful.
Landmarks that you'll understand, and if you are close to any of those we call out, and you're in that polygon, you'll need to go to a more substantial shelter. And everybody that lives in a mobile home in the state should have a plan on what to do, whether it's 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, weekday, or weekend.
At about 2 p.m., his team spotted a rotating wall of clouds near Jasper, Alabama, a clear sign of a tornado. The data was immediately transmitted to meteorologists, and within minutes, an official warning was issued for the city of Cullman.
This is a storm coming right for downtown Cullman. So again, look at there. Look,
there's your funnel.
Okay,
Not sure if it's down.
Right. Remember, just because you don't see the condensation, this thing could be down.
And across northern Alabama, the nightmare of April 27th was about to begin. It was 2:40 p.m. when a tornado touched down just north of Lewis Smith Lake, quickly intensifying into a violent EF4, with winds estimated at up to 190 miles per hour. From the start, this wasn't a short-lived funnel. It was a powerful long-track tornado, carving a relentless path to the northeast. As it moved into Cullman County, the tornado grew into a massive multiple vortex wedge, tearing through neighborhoods and heading straight for the heart of the city.
I was going right towards Mom. Oh shit. Oh no.
The winds became brutal as they reached downtown Cullman, crushing back structures and storefronts, including churches and businesses. Kitty Crawford, the owner of the Busy Bee Cafe, sent her staff to safety, but stayed behind herself to close the cafe. When she spotted the tornado heading directly towards her, she dropped to the floor and crawled as far as she could under the counter. In an instant, the winds tore the building apart, burying Kitty under the rubble. When rescuers pulled her from the debris, she had suffered severe pelvic and back injuries, but despite everything, she miraculously survived. The tornado didn't stop in Cullman, but continued northeast for nearly 47 miles, plowing into parts of Morgan and Marshall counties and passing near the city of Aaron. It finally lifted, leaving behind a continuous trail of devastation across north-central Alabama. 6 people died in the rural areas, and more than 100 were injured. The damage in downtown Cullman alone was estimated at $13.5 million, destroying roughly 40 businesses and 294 residences. But the worst was yet to come. A Another tornado touched down 5 miles southwest of Hamilton in Marion County, Alabama at 3:05 p.m.
Then the other tornado is near Hackleburg. If you're in Hackleburg, you need to be in a safe place now. Same thing up around Phil Campbell. And if power is out in Phil Campbell, and you know that folks are there, and we keep repeating ourselves with this, but it's a very serious situation because...
It quickly morphed into a monstrous F4, with winds raging at 170 miles per hour as it neared U.S. Highway 43. But as it reached Hackleburg, the winds reached up to 210 miles per hour, turning into a dangerous EF5. It was almost 3/4 of a mile wide when it struck downtown, and the buildings there bore the full brunt. Hackleburg High School, Middle School, and Elementary School were heavily damaged. Subdivisions and multiple businesses were decimated, and the town's only grocery store, Piggly Wiggly, was also left in ruins. By the time the storm passed, the Red Cross estimated that nearly 75% of Hackleburg's buildings along the 25.14-mile tornado path were destroyed. It was the first EF5 in Alabama since the 1998 Birmingham storm. The funnel then crossed Woodward Road and entered Phil Campbell, unleashing chaos everywhere. Homes were flattened, churches reduced to rubble, and mobile homes shredded with their frames hurled up to 50 yards away.
As soon as it was over, my dad and my son got in the truck with the chainsaws and everything because they knew that they were going to have help to, start cleaning up. We knew it was bad. And they got as far as our church, and they came back to the house and said that our church was gone. And my son said, "Mama, there are dead bodies everywhere." And we got out and just started working and doing whatever we could to help.
But the winds didn't slow down. The tornado tore out of Phil Campbell and roared through the surrounding countryside, reaching its peak strength near Oak Grove. In that small community, it carved a mile-wide path of devastation, claiming 27 lives in Franklin County alone. From Oak Grove, the twister cut through Mount Hope, Langtown, Tanner, and across Limestone County, before finally lifting in Madison County at 4:50 p.m. The tornado remained on the ground for 2 hours and 23 minutes, making it the second longest-lived tornado of the outbreak. Across its 132-mile path, 72 lives were lost and more than 150 people were injured, marking it as the second deadliest tornado in the United States in 2011, only behind Joplin. And as survivors of the Hackleburg-Phil Campbell tornado struggled to pick up the pieces of their lives, another disaster was quietly taking shape just 100 miles to the southeast. At 3:44 p.m., a tornado touched down 3 miles west-southwest of Smithville, along the Tennessee-Tombigbee Waterway. This one began intensifying almost immediately as it approached Smithville.
We do have a major tornado situation ongoing, now moving into Itawamba County. This is just around Smithville.
Transforming into a monstrous EF5 all in under 3 minutes. So when the almost mile-wide tornado struck the small town, which was only 1.6 square miles in the area, the destruction was unlike anything anyone could have imagined. The tornado scoured the ground, uprooted trees, and tore away well-anchored brick homes.
Me and my sister-in-law had to hold the door shut, and then we come out and everything was gone. I actually walked up on 3 that had passed away, and then there were 20 or more screaming for help.
With winds peaking at 205 miles per hour, the beast charged northeast along Mississippi Highway 25. It then continued into Alabama's Marion County, causing EF1 damage near Bexar, but strengthened again to an EF3 as it struck Scottsville. The violent winds tore through communities for 41 minutes, leveling countless homes before finally dissipating near Hodges at 4:23 p.m. The Smithville tornado was one of the most violent in U.S. history, claiming 23 lives, injuring over 140 people, and causing $14.4 million in damages. Its sheer power and destruction left a lasting scar on the community. However, an even deadlier tornado was brewing near Tuscaloosa County as residents of Smithville searched for their lost ones. At 5:10 p.m., a twister touched down just north of CR 60 near Tuscaloosa County. It began as an EF2, but as soon as it crossed the Blackwater River, the winds began howling at an EF4 speed, and that was when the real destruction began. The tornado uprooted everything in its path. Houses, stores, vegetation, nothing remained intact.
This is a large wedge tornado that is live on our tower cam atop the Tuscaloosa County Courthouse, and this is making a beeline for downtown Tuscaloosa. Velocities continue to be almost maxed out. The delta on the radar is about 150 knots, and again, this is a very serious situation.
In fact, the winds were so strong that debris flew as far as Birmingham, which was over 20 miles away in Jefferson County.
It's like a war zone. It's like somebody dropped a bomb.
Looking for our loved ones. We keep hearing people whining, but we can't find nobody. All of them are missing.
And you said
that was our house right there. It blew everything back this way. So they gotta be back here somewhere. We ain't found them nowhere. The hospitals ain't got them. We don't know where they at.
Moving through the Cedar Crest neighborhood, the tornado crossed McFarland Boulevard and into the University Boulevard in the Alberta City community. Alberta Elementary School was completely destroyed. Even the shopping center there was turned into piles of rubble on the foundation. By the time the tornado reached Hull, it had widened into a full mile, and its fury was far from over. The twister plowed through thick woodland and pushed towards Birmingham.
1.5 miles wide that we're seeing from the left edge of the red to the right side of the red. So the circulation with this, about 1.5 miles wide, that's likely what we're seeing in the picture there.
The tornado tore through the western and northern suburbs of Birmingham, leveling homes with catastrophic force.
Look at it swirling over here. You see it? Look at it.
Holy crap.
Oh my God. That's it. That's it. Oh my God.
Concord, Pleasant Grove, McDonald Chapel, and the northern parts of the city suffered severe damage.
Tornado, we've heard about extreme damage in Birmingham, Alabama. This is the same tornado that passed through Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We saw a huge debris ball when that occurred. We've been watching this wedge tornado for more than half an hour. It is now passing to the north of Birmingham, Alabama.
From there, it continued through Pratt City in Fultondale before losing strength along U.S. Route 31 and finally lifting 2 miles north of Tarrant. This tornado remained on the ground for 1 hour and 31 minutes. Claiming 44 lives in Tuscaloosa and 20 in Birmingham, and injuring more than 1,500 people. It was one of the longest track tornadoes of the 2011 outbreak, and the second deadliest of the year, surpassed only by the Hackleburg Phil Campbell tornado. Around 80 miles northeast of Tarrant, another monster tornado was brewing, ready to strike at any time. And it finally did at 6:15 p.m. in Lakeview, northeast of Geraldine. It began with light damage to trees and buildings in the area, but as it moved toward Fife, the tornado split into multiple vortices while intensifying to an EF3. The winds turned catastrophic by the time they tracked along Heaton Road, inflicting EF5 damage to everything in their path. The tornado finally exited Shiloh and bore down on Rainsville. With a half-mile radius of violent winds, Rainsville stood no chance. Entire neighborhoods were leveled. Homes, businesses, and public facilities were erased so completely that not even debris was left behind. Even brick houses along its path were damaged beyond recognition. The tornado then unleashed its full fury east of downtown, along Lingerfelt Road.
When you get up and the only wall standing is the one that you're on,
and you look up and you can see the sky from a basement.
Yeah.
That's very terrifying. There's no second floor, no
nothing.
The storm then continued northeast toward neighborhoods along county roads 515 and 441, leaving behind widespread destruction. In eastern Sylvania, the Mountain View Baptist Church was obliterated, along with many surrounding homes. Tragically, a couple inside of them was thrown into an open field and did not survive.
Just look at the magnitude of that. I mean, that eyeballing it looks to be, 300, 400 yards wide.
After carving a 3-mile path of total destruction, the tornado finally lifted just outside Rising Fawn at 6:55 p.m. The multi-vortex twister remained active for 36 minutes, leaving behind a 36-mile-long destruction path across DeKalb County. The relentless winds claimed 25 lives in the area and caused almost $10 million in damage. When the skies finally cleared on April 28th, the true scale of the devastation came into view, and what unfolded is now known as the 2011 super outbreak, the largest and costliest tornado outbreak in history. In just a few days, 368 tornadoes had torn across 21 states, leaving behind a scar of destruction and more than $10.2 billion in damage. And then, for a moment, the skies went quiet. Crews searched through rubble, survivors buried their dead, and the nation began to believe the worst was finally over. But this calm was just a pause, because even though the outbreak was over, the danger wasn't. As May arrived, the atmosphere remained dangerously unstable. The result was a new wave of violent storms, including one of the most infamous tornadoes in American history, the deadly Joplin. On May 22nd, the SPC issued a severe public weather outlook at 11:30 a.m., and 2 hours later, thunderstorms began developing over southeast Kansas. It was 5:34 p.m. when the tornado touched down in Newton County, Missouri.
Here's a look to the northwest of us.
Wow.
We are in western Joplin, so that's looking to the northwest. As we mentioned before, a high precipitation supercell.
Just east of the Missouri-Kansas state line, in a matter of minutes, the vortex widened rapidly, tracking into the more densely populated southwest corner of the city, near the Twin Hills Country Club. This area experienced heavy damage as several homes in a subdivision were hit with an intensity of EF3. The damage pattern remained consistent with an EF3 as the tornado tore through another subdivision just east of Iron Gates Road. But by the time it crossed Schiffer-Decker Avenue, the tornado escalated from EF3 to EF4. And as the vortex pushed into southern Joplin,
that is the portion of the storm that we have been concerned with.
Tornado sirens once again.
Tornado sirens once again going off in Joplin. Those are definitely power flashes that we are seeing on the ground.
The winds picked up ever more speed, turning the tornado into a monstrous EF5. Winds surged to nearly 200 miles per hour. The damage to the buildings was catastrophic. Entire structures were completely leveled. Vehicles were hurled and twisted beyond recognition. St. John's Regional Medical Center, one of the two Joplin hospitals in the tornado's path, took a direct hit.
The hospital has no power. It was hit very, very hard. You can see nearly every window in the hospital has been damaged. The roof severely damaged. Every vehicle in the parking lot.
Leaving a deadly trail, the storm tracked eastward, destroying a large church, Franklin Technology Center, St. Mary's Catholic Church and School, and Joplin High School.
The graduation ceremonies, thankfully, were not happening at the high school itself because the high school was demolished. So just one situation after another. There's a story kind of every 5 feet you walk around here.
Inside a Pizza Hut on South Range Line Road, manager Christopher Lucas rushed his employees and about 15 customers into a walk-in freezer as sirens blared. It was the strongest shelter available, but the door wouldn't seal under the pressure. So Lucas wrapped a bungee cord around the handle and his arm, holding it shut as the tornado struck. He managed to hold on for a few terrifying moments, but the EF5s tore the door open, pulling Lucas into the storm. He saved everyone else at the cost of his own life.
The only reason we survived is because he held the door shut with a strap.
The tornado finally lifted at 6:12 p.m., just east of the small town of Diamond, ending its 38-minute path of destruction across Joplin. When the winds finally died down, 158 lives were gone, making the Joplin tornado the deadliest single tornado in the United States since official records began in 1950. It was also the costliest, with damages soaring around $2.8 billion. It was a dark nightmare for Americans, one few could have imagined. But what followed would prove even worse. Another 6 months lay ahead, no less destructive. On June 1st, tornadoes struck western Massachusetts and western Maine. The strongest was a long-tracked EF3 that tore through Springfield, shaking the region with brutal force. It first touched down at 4:17 p.m. in the Manger Hill area of Westfield, damaging nearly 257 homes before plowing into the densely wooded north of Agawam.
Seeing it live on 22 News, tornado on the ground in the area of Agawam. Get inside, get into your basement right now.
Strong winds uprooted trees and roads, but worst of all, the first victim occurred there. As the tornado gained strength, it moved toward West Springfield. Over the next 70 minutes, it destroyed more than 10,000 acres of forest and around 1,400 homes. 3 people were killed, and the damage reached $227 million. After this outbreak, tornado activity in the northeast began to fade, marking the transition to summer weather. However, the next strike came where it was least expected. A hurricane formed in the Bahamas and unexpectedly changed course. Atmospheric currents pushed it north along the U.S. coast. Just before landfall, the winds began to weaken, and many believed the worst was over. In reality, the storm was only beginning to reveal its true danger, as floodwaters quickly followed. The Carolina coast turned into a chain of flooded bays, and soon, New Jersey and New York were hit by relentless rain. The consequences were catastrophic. Damages reached $15.8 billion. 48 people lost their lives. And after the recent tornadoes, it felt like the nightmare would never end. But even then, the tornado season was far from over. In late 2011, a powerful storm system moved across the southern plains into Oklahoma. Within just 24 hours, 11 tornadoes touched down, making it the second most active November in the state's history. Among them, one storm stood above the rest: the tornadoes that hit Tillman County. It was the first EF4 tornado ever recorded in Oklahoma during November, a true meteorological rarity for the plains. It was also the last major strike of 2011, the year that saw 1,721 tornadoes sweep across the United States, including 6 devastating EF5s. The year became the second deadliest in U.S. history, with 553 people killed and more than 5,480 injured. A haunting reminder of nature's power and how a single storm can leave scars that never fade.